What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Quality Talks podcast. We are, almost a quarter? It's over a quarter of the way through the year already. I don't know where the time's going. But as we promised at the start of the year, we're aiming for 24 guests this year. It was put out there. It was put out into the universe. And we're racking them up. And we've got another great guest to join us this evening as well, who I'll introduce in a moment. I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that continues to support the podcast, who likes, shares, subscribes. Obviously, your feedback is really valuable to us. So please do, if you do watch an episode, you do listen to an episode, even if you don't comment directly on the channel, by all means, drop a message to us directly, either to myself or Chris, or even just to the Quality Talks LinkedIn page, because that again massively helps. So the episode this evening, then, it's going to be a really interesting one. I'm really looking forward to this because I've been waiting a while to have this person on. They started their career in the RAF, so I'm giving you some little teasers here. You may start piecing things together a little bit. They recently did a talk at the Testing Peers conference as well around quality engineering. So if you were there, again, you may know who this person is. But I'm not gonna tease it anymore because you'll all just be disconnected and leave anyway. So I'm gonna introduce our guest now, who is the amazing Stephen Platten. How are you doing, Stephen?
Yeah, good, Stu. How are you, mate?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited to have you on. I've been wanting to get you on for ages. We've spoken on and off over some time, and I've been wanting to get you on. And I know you follow the podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is great. So I gave a very sort of teaser type intro there, but I'm going to hand over to yourself, Stephen, to do a proper intro, and then we're going to get into some of the good stuff.
Sure. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Stephen Platten. I go by the handle of the Stoic Tester on LinkedIn. That's probably what most people will know me by. Principal consultant at Inspired Testing, so it's a pure play software testing company. They're based out of South Africa, but we also work out of the UK as well. And I've been testing on and off for 13 years, something like that, maybe a little bit longer, before I knew what testing was. And as Stu outlined, I was a Royal Air Force engineer for a long time before I pivoted into the crazy world that is QA.
Yeah, amazing. So it's like everybody has a different story about how they get into software testing and QA, and it's like I just love it. It's everybody's got a different one. And Stephen, just so it sort of gives a bit of context for the audience, really, we spoke around what we could do this episode about, and we were throwing some ideas together. And obviously, your early days in the RAF sort of like was the starting point of your career. And in this episode, for everybody, we're going to start there, and then we're going to sort of build, and then sort of go through what the learnings were from that, and then how that's manifested itself into the rest of your career, some of the things you're now doing, in terms of you being an ambassador for MOT and accreditation and all this sort of stuff. So there's a lot we're going to be covering this evening, everyone. So hopefully you're going to settle in and enjoy it. But Stephen, let's go back to where it all started for you in the RAF, and how that then sort of flowed, I guess, into the software testing space.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with a very short interlude into how I got into the Air Force.
That'd be great.
I grew up in a little town called Hull on the East Coast. If you've ever been there, don't worry, you've not missed anything. I spent 2 years at university studying electronic engineering, so not computer science or anything like that. Electronic engineering. I did far too much socialising with the means of alcohol than I did actual studying, which meant that I kind of bounced out of uni after 2 years. So failed my degree. I was like, I still want to do engineering. But maybe the structured kind of training, the structured kind of lesson planning and stuff, lectures, just wasn't really gelling with how I like to learn. My dad's always been like a bit of a military buff, so I said to him, "What about me joining the forces?" And he said, "If you're going to join one, join the Air Force because you can't swim and you don't like digging." So I was like, "Okay," so I'll join the Air Force. And so I joined the Air Force as a avionics engineer. I think they probably call something else now, but joined the Air Force and got a culture shock at basic training, which is probably the first introduction to a standard of quality of something that I never expected. As a really simple example, I didn't realise how neat a bed could be until I went for basic training, and they said to you every morning, that's what your bed needs to look like.
Wow.
What I mean by like folded corners measured with a tape measure and tucked in and like pristine. I'm like, oh, okay, this is just how they do normal stuff.
Yeah.
We left basic training to kind of like what is like effectively a tech college kind of environment. So you spend like a year effectively learning your craft. You come out as an engineer, and then I was let loose on the squadrons. So when you're in the Air Force, there's a couple of different ways of working. One of those is working in a squadron. So and I was put onto fast jets, which is kind of the cool Gucci. Gucci is a very military term, by the way. It means good. So if I say that, that's what that means. I ended up on a fast jet squadron on for Typhoons, which is based out of Lincolnshire. And again, that was the first time I got to true engineering tasks. So if anyone saw my talk at PeersCon, it was based upon like a really simple example where I had to go change like some gearbox oil in an aircraft and how many steps and how many different types of quality was built into that very simple process, from like checking the batch of the oil was correct and I was using the right tool, all the way to like the level of oversight and the process I would use and everything in between, and how that translated to testing. So again, quality all the way through. Not much in the way of testing, not really. It was still more very engineering-y. And then effectively what culminated was a move to a place called the Mission Support Centre, which was in Coningsby, which I describe as the Bletchley Park, which sounds much cooler than it is. It wasn't that cool, but in my head it was. And that was probably where testing was like first bedded into what we did. So that place basically was an Air Force run independent, a kind of assurance organisation, for want of a better description.
Yeah.
So we would take stuff that the third parties like Gear B Systems and Lockheed and other places people like that would construct, they wanted to put on the aircraft, and we would independently assess it on a very complicated testing rig that we had. And my boss at the time, and the Air Force is very hierarchical, he introduced us to like, we're going to be doing testing, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? So he had the ISTQB like syllabus kind of like in his head, and he just downloaded it into us for like the first 2 or 3 years of it being there. So quickly learned like testing methodologies, like what a plan is, what a test case is, outcome results, like the nuts and bolts of it, kind of thing. And again, that's my first realization that I'm actually testing now. I'm not doing engineering. I'm a tester, not a like. I've done engineering for a long time in my Air Force career, and this is the last half of it was testing, and I much enjoyed that than I did this. And I'm not sure why that was. I think initially it was finding something out that someone else thought was something else. Like I quite like proving people wrong or proving someone that they've got an understanding of something different. I really enjoyed that. And then that place really also built into me what happens when you've got a really good leader. So my leader at the time, he had a very cool job apart from being my boss. He also was the navigator for the Lancaster, the bomber that's at Space. Like very cool, like side hustle of a job that he had.
That is, isn't it?
Yeah, humble brag.
Put that on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, it's good. He's a very cool chap. I hope he doesn't. He's not going to be hearing this, but it's Mark Minolti was his name. He looks a bit like the bad guy from the Thunderbirds, the originals.
Oh, really?
That's what he looks like. And he won't mind me saying that. Probably. And he was the first, not the first, but probably someone who really instilled in me what a good engineering or a good leader looks like and what a good manager looks like. That he personified a lot of those traits. So being a real good people person, knowing like he knew not only everyone's first names, he knew everyone's spouse's names, he knew how many kids you had, he knew where you lived. Didn't have to do that. He just went out of his way to do that. And in the Air Force, which is military, very hierarchical, that doesn't really happen at that level from where he was. I was very much like several levels detached from him. Yeah. And I will tell a good story from off the back of that, which was my favourite testing moment and also probably my favourite career moment in the Air Force. And that's after that, I realised I could do it outside of the Air Force. This is a big thing for me. Effectively, we were given a problem with a piece of equipment that had been used for a long time. Something kind of weird was happening. So they give us effectively that Mark chap would give us almost free rein to kind of do whatever we needed to. He'd go, here's the resources you want, here's the tools that you might need, just solve a problem for me, and this is the problem I'm going to give you. So me and my colleague, who is an amazing developer who works at Lincoln, found this problem because of the way that we would look at information compared to others. So without going into detail, effectively we like to, I'm a very visual learner, so I like to see things visually, graphs, infographics, pictures, diagrams, schematics. My brain starts firing really quick. Reams of text, I can't go.
I'm exactly the same, mate. Honestly,
yeah, which I think is why, like at uni, I just couldn't, like, just read this. I just couldn't get on with it. And we quickly spotted something because of how we visualised the data that was being presented, which created a hypothesis. Which again, what you do from good testing, you create a hypothesis. Okay, well, let's create some experiments to test that hypothesis. We tested it on our test rig and we found the symptom of the problem. I think, right, this is the thing that's wrong. And we presented this to him. Obviously, it's way too technical for what he said. He said, okay, cool. Now what do you need? But he didn't even say, how confident are you that that was the right answer? That's like how much faith that kind of person had into me. He's like, cool, I don't need to question your thinking. You're all smart lads. What do you need? We'll need this equipment, and we'll need to go to this place, and we'll need a car and a hotel, and blah 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 blah. I was like, cool, go. And we just dispatched, and off we went. So we drove across the country to a place called Wharton, if you've ever been there, which is where
I know of Wharton. Yeah,
typhoons are built there. So we had to basically kind of prove our hypothesis to the flight test engineers at BAE Systems, who were, for my profession at the time, was like as high as you could get. Right, there's no beyond that. And we effectively demonstrated the problem that we saw with our equipment and theirs. And we said, like, this is the problem. I had to kind of whiteboard it all out. I think this is this. We demonstrated it. And they went, yeah, great, you found it. And then we kind of rang the boss back up. And we said, yeah, we've proved it with them. It's definitely the problem. And he's like, cool, now you've got to write your test report. And it was like 100 pages or something insane. It was like nuts. Crazy technical detail we had to go into to kind of rationalize it. But then coming back to like not a hero's welcome or anything, it was like, yeah, good job, lads. That was it. But after that, like being in front of all those people that were I considered like better than me in the profession or further more mature in their careers. Oh, Steve, I think you could do this outside the Air Force. And at that point in my life, just had my son. Well, I think it was just around that time. And military life is quite difficult for families, especially if you're embedded with them. So I decided, I was already thinking about leaving anyway. This kind of proved it to me. I can do this kind of the job outside. And that pivoted me to leaving the Air Force and joining a company called Kinetic, the double Q. And they're a big defence contractor, and they own all the ranges. So if you've been seeing like Charles Ranges, they own all that land, do all the stuff. Right. They're also the guys who came up with radar. So like if you track back the lineage of Kinetic, the people that came up with the radar for World War II, it was them. I worked for them for 2 years, doing sort of what I was doing in the Air Force, but like a little bit different, more of a consultancy. I guess consultant was the best way of describing it. I was the same job I did like a month before, except I didn't have my uniform on. I was just telling people that's what they should do instead of doing a thing. Very consultancy. Like, Steve, just tell them what you used to do for the 2 or 3 years before you left. All right, just do that. and then I had again another light bulb moment where one of the things I didn't have was like a test strategy. So the client, effectively Air Force I was working with, the department didn't have like a formalized strategy or approach of how to do things. They had some sort of structure, but they didn't have kind of anything written down or anything well documented. And I'd read that you need a test strategy and that there are important things to have. And I'd done my TMMI and I'd done my ISTQB and all that. And like read about this thing all the time. And like I've never seen one ever. Yeah. Maybe I should just write one. So I wrote one for the client. It was really well received. And then I was like, well, if I can write one for these guys, maybe I could do it for someone else. And it's not in a military environment and push my comfort zone. Yeah. So left Kinetic and then joined Yorkshire Water as a test lead, and then quickly promoted to a test manager. I think after 6 months, so I ran a whole portfolio, and then did a little stint at Admiral as a chapter lead, and then eventually ended up inspired as a consultant, meeting the people along the way that I'd worked with on that journey. So
yeah.
like a really quick sort of Air Force to yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible journey. Like it's and I say I know you listen to the podcast, so you've probably like Chris, co-host Chris, who his goes from sort of
very
car
wiggly,
manufacturing,
wiggly,
very wiggly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I find it's incredible that when if you start your career in software and tech, you kind of just think, well, this is the only way that I can get into software testing or whatever. And actually, there's so many different pathways, but we don't talk about them enough. And I think that's the thing. And I think we need more stories like yours, like Chris's, to help people understand that even if you start elsewhere, there are always pathways in, right? And I think it's really interesting. And I've got two questions very quickly of the sort of the initial. So firstly, do you still make your bed in the same way?
No, I don't. There are probably some other habits. I'm trying to think of other stuff. So there's so I said Gucci there as an example, right? Like there's there's little language things that I still do. Certainly do that. And like timekeeping, so like being either early for things or trying to be like regimented with my time. Definitely still do that.
Yeah.
I don't shave anymore. So the last time I shaved was when I left the Air Force. Literally, I was like, I'm never doing that. I literally took the razor and just lobbed out the window. That's never happening again. Which sounds weird, but like being forced to shave for 13 years, I was like, I'm going to grow a beard now. I think I've earned the right. So I don't do the bed, but there's probably a few other things that my family are annoyed about by the way I do stuff.
Well, I'm going to come back to some of those things that you're still doing.
Not
that your family are annoyed about. But the other question was, and this is just something for my own curiosity, was did they actually read the test report that you had to write?
Well, it's a really good point, right? And this is something that this is a good example of a lesson I took at that point.
So we're going to come into those in a minute,
and I've applied it to my current job, right? Is I start to write all this stuff out, and then I give it to my boss at first, my principal engineer, give it his first draft. He's like, "What's the answer?" I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "The answer is like page 7." He's like, "The answer is the first 2 sentences or paragraph. Give me the answer there." I was like, "Justify the answer afterwards, but you need to give the reader the answer because they're not going to read it, or they're not going to read it in detail. Right? Certainly, like non-technical engineers aren't going to read that material. It's just over their head. So you need to give them the answer and the so what at the start." And I took that as like every time I do a report or a recommendation to a client, or like we want to push it into production, answer, justification afterwards. Because they don't care how many defects you've got. They don't care like the turnaround time. They don't care about like we've had performance. No, I don't care them. Is it a yes or is it a no? And if it's a no, why is it a no? If it's a yes, why is it a yes? They might care after that.
Yeah.
So they didn't read the report, but they hopefully read the first paragraph at least.
Well, I think that's it's a great, like you say, it's a great example of the lesson that you've taken away to then sort of into sort of growing in this profession. Are there any other areas that sort of lessons that you've sort of taken on board, or skills or anything that you've kind of gone, that's transferable, that's just naturally kind of been part of who you are and made you a better quality professional?
Maybe could we separate it from like skills and behavior? So like skills about attention to detail, really obvious one. Like if someone is meticulously checking that your kit is in good order, that's a very good Air Force sounding term there. You get really good at spotting like that's not right in the place, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
So you start to question stuff a lot. So that's the like critical thinking and attention to detail, definitely one. A love of process, or if there isn't a process, why isn't there one? Or would this thing be better with a process?
Yeah.
Because the Air Force is built on orders and ways of working. Obviously not always the case. Like tech startup, I'm assuming you're not a process, you don't need to. But certainly, why is there a deviation from this behaviour? Because no one's following a process to follow. That's definitely one. An engineering mindset. So like if there's a problem, attack the problem from multiple different ways of thinking, and then coming up with proposed solutions. So don't present someone a problem, present them a problem with 5 or 6 different options of how to solve that problem. Otherwise, you're just giving me noise, and I can't actually noise, mate. It's this, and you can maybe do these things. Cool, pros and cons. Yeah. That certainly as a consultant, I do that a ton. Like, there's no point just presenting the client a problem with their framework. This is the problem, and this is what you could do about it. That's definitely one. Making sure my evidence, I don't know what this would come under, but like making sure the evidence of the thing I'm doing is tip top. So if I I'm making a recommendation to a cab and I say I don't think this should go into production, I want a body of stuff behind me to back up that. It's not just Steve saying that; it's Steve plus all these artifacts that I built and are well maintained. And now a good example of me translating that. This is a couple of junior analysts that work for me currently, and I give them admin time. So, like on a Friday, I say to them, all of your artifacts, all of the material that you've done this week, tidy it up and make sure it's all. I don't want stuff that's not linked to a Jira. I don't want stuff that's just floating about on your personal drive.
Yeah.
Half an hour, clean it all up. Because if I need to go and find something, I don't want to be like emailing on a weekend, where's blah, follow up structure. So maybe that they don't like that, but that's something I certainly do with them. So I think that's like, I guess that would be skills. And then behaviours would be speaking less and listening more. Be a bad example on this podcast. We should talk to you.
This is your story, Steve.
Sure. Let someone finish their point before you kind of like jump in. Especially if I'm a problem-solving kind of person, you're just talking about a problem. Oh, sweet! I want to go straight to solution. Actually, hear the whole problem out. Really important. No one will care as much about the thing as you care about the thing, which is a very Stoic thing we might get onto. What I mean by that is I can encourage people to care more about testing. I can encourage people to care more about quality. I can encourage people to care how well they write that defect ticket out. But they're not going to do it as well as me or as well as I think I can do because they don't care as much as me because it's not their job to do that. Right? Or even if it is, they might not be as passionate as me or as enthusiastic as me or whatever that is. So never bring your own expectations of what you're going to be doing onto other people. They have their own ways of working, their own ways of doing things, and yours isn't necessarily always right as well. That's another good example of that. Yeah. And then I think the betterment of my career or not, like a very open or almost brutal level of honesty. If I'm asked something. So, why aren't we doing this thing? Well, observation is because we're not rewarding that behaviour. So why would we do the thing? Maybe we should reward the behaviour and the behaviour will change. Like a carrot and stick. So I give a good example of that. Again, I'll go back to the 2 juniors I've got working for me currently. It took me, I want to say, a month and a half for me to convince them to say, I don't understand.
Right.
Like they would just go, So the South African base and the culture there is very much like agree. I'm like, I don't want you to agree. I want you to tell me if something isn't working, or if I am not explaining it correctly, or it's too complicated, or I'm not making sense, or my accent is too thick. Please tell me that you don't understand. Because if you just go yes, I'm going to assume that's what that means. I'm just going to proceed on with my life, and we're going to waste each other's time. So making sure. You'll hear it in my language a lot. It's like, does that make sense? Am I coming across okay? Like a lot of confirmation type language at the end of a period of me speaking. I'll always like, does that make sense? I realise I got almost a frustrating tick, but that's coming from a place of I don't want to be misunderstood. I want to make sure that we're both going off the same. We're both coming at it from the same information, from the same perspective. We can move on with it. I think. I don't know if that's a long-winded way of answering your question, Stu.
You're looking for confirmation there, Steve. But no, absolutely is, and I think there's some really interesting points there. And I think that I do some that sort of does that make sense? When you've been talking for a while, I always want to just reconnect with people and say,
absolutely.
Are you understanding what I'm saying? Because if you're not, let's deal with that now rather than. Going a few days down the line and you coming back and going, do you remember? Yeah, I really didn't understand. It's like, we could have just talked about it in the moment because, Yeah, I think I love those sort of things that you've transferred over, and even like the structure side of things. I think that is something that's really interesting in what we do. You know, sometimes you have to be a little bit unstructured, right?
Yeah,
So
of
say if you're
course.
doing, but even like when you're doing things like exploratory testing, people think, oh, exploratory testing is just a bit like, oh yeah, a bit gung ho.
You
It's
swing
not.
it.
There's
Yeah.
structure to it, but it's freedom within a
Mm.
structure, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's something that we need to be better at sometimes, because that freedom within a structure allows creativity, allows sort of the mind to flow
Yeah.
a little bit more.
It's just putting guardrails at the edges
Exactly.
as opposed to a box you have to work in. So
Yeah.
guardrails you could bounce into and off of as opposed to a box you can strain by, right?
Yeah, precisely that. Is there any, would you say there was any sort of coming out of the military and going
Mm-hmm.
into that first role?
Yeah.
Was there any behaviors or skills that you initially started applying and then realized, actually, yeah, this doesn't work here? Or even, you know, maybe when you moved out of sort of the military space
Mm.
entirely, maybe, I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
yeah. So maybe like I had a bit of black and white thinking when
okay.
I left the Air Force in Connecticut before I'd moved to Yorkshire Water, where
Yeah.
I was like, this is good, this is bad. Do this, don't do that. Like,
Mm,
always do this, never do that.
yeah.
Realizing that sometimes that just can't work in a practical setting. Like, either you've got constraints on your budget, your constraints on your people, constraints on your tooling,
Yeah.
constraints on the culture, right? I can, like, please do it this way, and just go, not really bothered. All right, cool.
Mm.
Like, a good example of that, I've had a PM once say to me, stop testing. She literally told my team that I'd stood up, can you guys stop? I was like, what? Why? He's like, you're finding lots of problems. I was like, it's in the job description, dude.
Hello.
Kind of. It's like we can't fix at the speed that you're finding it. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
expect you to. Like,
No.
it's more very easy for us to do that than it is for you to fix it. I totally understand. I'm not asking you to do that. So yeah, kind of taking that structure, like you said, but also
Mm,
then not like ramming it on townspeople's throats, knowing when to
yeah.
apply it, when not to apply it, and becoming almost viciously pragmatic. So the language I was used, I was like, so I went to Leeds Altia, I think last year, and they did a really cool Q&A session where they split the room in half.
Yeah.
And they put a statement up, and they're like, are you this side of the argument or this side of the argument? And I would tend to try and stand in the middle all the time. Because ultimately, my answer used to be, I was like, I don't care as long as it works, which is what
Mm,
most people that have a business that are making software, ultimately, that is all they care about. Like, does
yeah.
it do the thing that I have asked it to do for the
Yeah.
people that want it? If the answer is yes, all the other stuff is cool, but that's the ultimate thing that matters. And if
Mm,
your thing is just like, well, it's recommended industry best practice that you do blah, 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 does it lead to this? No, well, then I don't care. You can't make them care about that thing if it isn't giving them the working piece of kit at the end.
yeah.
So that pragmatism is something I quickly realised I had to adopt when I'd left the Air
Yeah.
Force versus like another environment. Seeing how challenging testing is a non-defense environment where
Mm,
like the level of rigor is very high because obviously the safety implications be going wrong very different.
yeah.
As opposed to like I'm building a website and 1,000 customers a month might use it. If it goes down, bad, but not. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to be on the newspapers, right? So
Yeah.
understanding that I can't apply that level of like you must do blah to them is just a wouldn't fly. So I think that
Yeah.
pragmatism definitely evolved over that transitional period when I moved between, for
Yeah.
sure.
And that's something that I've adopted more over the years as well, because I think, you know, it's very easy sort of early on in your career, you know, to be very black and white and say, well, this is what the textbook says, and this is what, you know, so we have to be doing it this way. Or even with things like agile, it's like, oh, the agile ceremonies are there, we've got to do this and we've got
Yeah,
to do that, and I can't even be bothered with all that anymore. I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm a complete pragmatist when it comes to methodology and all that sort of thing. I'm kind of the same as you, right? What do we need to do to produce the outcome that we need to achieve?
yeah,
Right, and how do we do that as a team in the best possible way? You could do it in this. I don't care, right? Let's just figure it out together.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's you know, being adaptable is something that's really critical in sort of the quality space, definitely. But then I want to move more into sort of like, you know, you moved into a leadership role, not long after joining a new company.
Mhm.
And obviously you spoke very highly of your leader in the RAF, and so can you talk a bit more about what you learned from that individual, and then how that's kind of played into your leadership style, and maybe some things that you have adapted as well?
Yeah, and I'll probably maybe talk about some examples of without naming them. That was some bad leaders as well. Like we've all had those.
Please. We all learn from bad leaders more so than we do from the good, right? Yeah.
So I spoke about that example of Mark where so the stuff that he did well was like very personable and very easy to approach, and would back you, right? So I trust you. You're one of my engineers. I back you. So I would. That's my default kind of way of working with the if I have a team built around me. Is my default response is I back you, and I'm going to give you whatever I will enable you to get the job done. But so this is something I've adapted, which is that's kind of bitten me. Is like I do trust you until I don't. So when you start to either abuse or circumnavigate that respect, then I'll flip the other way. Right? I don't want to do those things, but I will if I have to, and that's something I definitely learned. It kind of bit me of giving too much trust. Not being completely guarded, but definitely having a healthy level of respect between me and my peer group. Understanding, I think that's one element. I think another element was understanding, and this is an example from a bad leader, and I won't say where they worked, but was not everybody has the same motive that you do. So as a leader, my motives personally are to make sure my team can do the best job that they can. I'm not actually entirely outcome driven. Like the team is doing the outcome. I'm not really the outcome guy. They are. And so giving them everything that they need to give the outcome that they're being asked to do is what drives me. Other people aren't driven by that. Other people have less wholesome motives, right? So understanding that some people are driven for different needs, psychologically and emotionally or whatever. Work ethic would be something I would definitely say was like a positive I picked up. So again, I've had really bad examples of people with very poor work ethics, and then people with amazing work ethics. Like really simple. The person that taught me work ethics was my dad, not a software engineer. He's terrified of computers. He can't do an email, etc., etc. Insert all of the memes you can think of someone in his age bracket. He can't do all of those things, but what he can do is like in his given area of expertise, outwork men twice his age. Twice, 2 times younger than him. I couldn't keep up with him when I did stuff with him when I was working on building sets and whatnot. He's a machine, right? So I learned that incredibly important because ultimately you can be someone who sits back and lets the team crack on. But you need to be able to have, at some point in your career, been in their position for them to ask him to do something, right? So I'm not going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't be willing to say either do myself or have done in the past. Right? Maybe you are more technically gifted at me in a particular, let's say a framework or something that I can't code in. That's cool, but I know that I can sit down and do something similar to that and how long that will take. So it's reasonable for me to ask you to do it, to support you to do it. I think other stuff would be again, I'm thinking of non-testing examples, but not going too off the rails. So like I did like lots of weird jobs before I joined the Air Force as well, like and learning that. So pride would be one. I don't know if that's a leadership trait, but what I mean by that is the story I have is I worked in a department store. It's like behind a till, at a checkout. And it used to annoy me how messy things were and how things weren't like laid out to help. So I would just spend a spare hour every day when it wasn't busy, reordering everything and putting in a kind of bit of a structure to make it easier to navigate. And I remember a lady who I used to work for, she's like, "Why have you done all that?" No one's asked you to do that. I said, "Well, just makes sense to do it. It's like a good idea." I thought, just to help. Like being a servant leader, like that trying to serve my group is a really powerful trait. Not to gain favor with the group or acknowledgement of the group, but it builds confidence in them to you that you're willing to go to bat for them, so to speak. I think that's a really powerful trait to learn as a leader. And I think last one would be maybe empowering them to to better themselves. So I want to, Steve, I want to learn how to do so and so. Cool, mate. You can. What kind of to help you do that? Or I want to transition to this job role. Cool. How do we get to that point? What have I learned in getting to that position? That's a really powerful thing as well. I think, and that's like through mentoring people and whatnot. I think it's a powerful trait as a leader to have as well.
Yeah, no, that they're really good. And was there a moment of like, sort of almost, I guess, welcome to leadership moment of that? All of a sudden, you're realizing that actually, I'm not the one doing the do here. I'm the one now leading people. Was there, for me, I had a few moments like that early on, where it's a bit like, oh, I need to step back here a little bit, and was there anything like that from your perspective?
Yeah,
because obviously.
Yeah, I think certainly like one example springs to mind, which was when I first got to Yorkshire Water, I was a test lead, so I was maybe given like 3 or 4 different projects to test, and I would have maybe 1 or 2 testers working with me or for me to various wide and wonderful things. And then when I got the position of delivery manager, so I think in that probably like 30 people working for me, something like that, maybe 25. That I used to be like, I'd know about every project, I'd be all over it, I'd know loads of stuff, and that's not scalable when it gets to like 40 projects across 20 people. Like I don't have the bandwidth, man. And I realised, it came to my head of QA at the time, Andy. I think I had to give him like an update about something, and I went really into the weeds in it. It's like, I don't need to know that, Steve. Is it red or green? I was like, it's green. It's like, great, that's all I need. Like if it's red, sweet, go to town and tell me why it's not good. Like, I don't need that right now. And it's like, you should, it's cool that you know it, but how are you going to know that when, like I said, I don't know that for mine. I'll delegate that to you and your colleagues, and they know that, and they tell me. That's a good example. I was like, oh, I'm actually hating my own team by like pulling so much of their time to find everything out. I was like, I've got to trust the leads to be all over it. But all I did was like, but when you're telling me how it's going, I want it in this format.
Yeah.
So like, given the format to work to, if it's not a green, like rag order it, tell me what the problems are in this structure, because that helps me present that information to my head of QA. That was like my big moment of like trying to like spin all the plates and like put one on my foot and juggle. It just doesn't work when it's a scaling problem as a leader, right? You can't have that level of knowledge on everything.
No, and I it's very similar to me as well, Stephen. When I was trying to do too many things, and I realized like trust is such an important part, right? And allowing people and empowering people to do the things in the best possible way and such like. And you mentioned about trust earlier, and I work on the premise of like, I will trust everybody from day one unless they give me a reason not to. Right?
Absolutely.
But I'm not I don't assume that they will trust me as a leader, so I have to earn that trust. And I'll often, if I start a new role in this new organization or a new team, I'll always ask them, what do you need to see from me to gain your trust?
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's a really good way of kind of like almost being vulnerable to them to say, oh, I trust you. So, you're empowered. But what do you need to see from me? And I think that's something that I learned, I'd love to say really early on, but it took a little bit. It took a bit of like pain and stuff.
I think that's definitely a lesson you have to learn through the hard way. I think you have to feel it go wrong to learn that's a positive behaviour. Someone can't tell you that. Like, you don't need to stretch yourself too thin. You need to kind of keep yourself detached a little bit. Yeah. No, I can do it. That's just someone who doesn't know what they're doing. I can be like all over everything at once. No, you can't. Of course you can't. Someone's going to fall through.
It. And you talked a lot about, or you mentioned earlier about sort of like mentoring and coaching people and sort of, helping develop people. And did anything from your time in the RAF translate into that? So are you using any similar techniques, or is it more stuff you've learned since maybe that helps you do that?
Yeah, so there is like formal mentoring in the forces.
Right.
Certainly, as you get promoted, you're expected to be mentoring people below you.
Yeah.
Below you in rank, I don't mean below you in terms of anything else. To get them to where they need to be. and then also an element of content. And this is actually my peers talk of like, not only do you have to tell people like this is how you to do, this is what good looks like, you have to keep checking that they're doing that, not from like over your shoulder, like, are you still doing it the right way? More like, have your skills faded because you haven't touched the thing in a while? Or have you just not been able to do that type of work for 3 months? Well, then probably you need a bit of a refresher on it. That became like a framework that the Air Force used for its engineers, which was called like an X annotation. So this is where you would do all your formal training on an aircraft platform, and that means you would be qualified. And then your X annotation means you're experienced, which is two different things, right? I've done all my courses and all my training versus I've tested this kind of platform 300 times. That's someone that's experienced now. So I realized when I moved into testing, like we do lots of the Q and not much of the X.
Yeah.
Right. And if we do the X, it's not really kind of in any structure whatsoever to be tangible. So something I tried to do in various places I've been in is like making sure everyone's got the Q, but trying to build ways of building up the X. So communities of practice, like lunch and learns, drop-in sessions, talks, one-on-one mentoring sessions if I need to. I still mentor interns and stuff at the current company I'm with, just voluntarily, like on Fridays and Friday mornings and stuff. I'll just have someone that I've been mentoring for years. Come here, how's your day been going? Cool, I've been on this, and this, one or two. That's a really powerful thing. I again, Air Force had it in a loose term, and I translated the bits I thought would work into my testing career at the moment. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned there about like communities of practice, lunch and learns, and I know that's something you're very passionate about, and you put a lot of time in. But it's also not very easy either. It does take a lot of effort, and because you, depending on the size of the teams, the size of the sort of the not even just so for me, like when I've built communities of practice, like let's say like in the quality space, I don't want it to just be quality professionals because quality is holistic, right? So I'm trying to then encourage others to come along, and then it's kind of like almost it just seems like overwhelming at times. I don't know what's been your experience. How have you kind of approached doing that, Stephen? What have you learned over the years doing that?
I've built like at least 2 community practices pretty much from scratch. In my career, and similar things. So it has to be. I'd love to get other people involved that aren't testers first, right? I'd love to get like your peers and devs involved in these things, but you can't get them involved at the same level that your testers are involved in. So the community, I'd build like a community site and I'd have resources and training material and videos and how-to guides and templates, all this kind of good stuff people can just use. I can't just go to a dev. Like, if you need to do testing stuff, you just go to the site. It's all there. It's great. Watch the 15 hours of videos recorded this last year. Not to do it right. Versus like very targeted engagement of like, cool man. I know your devs have got like a downtime week or they're in between releases. Do you maybe want me or one of your senior testers to talk about how we're doing X, Y, and Z from your own dev's perspective, or like doing some requirements or static analysis with some BAs? This is how I would assess a requirement that you've written. If you give it to me, this is how me and my team would look at it. Very targeted engagement to break down that lines of communication, making sure that we're not sitting like the us and them type philosophy that still exists, unfortunately. Making sure that QAs and testers are part of that broader community. We're not an island to ourselves. So I think you become part of a network of communities of practice, right? So you have your testing community, you have your dev community, and there's bridges built between those two things. Right? Certainly on the automation side, there should be a real connection between those two groups. That's how I would build that out. I certainly try to. And again, don't force. I've had people tend to force engagement. Like, you must attend this session. I'll say, if you've made it a must, how much do you think they actually care? Like, they're there because you've told them to be there and you've forced them to be there. I want it to organically grow over time. I can't force people in. And again, it goes back to my earlier point of like, I can't make people care or think about something like I think. It's a very stoic. It's a very stoic philosophy thing, right? I have zero control over how you think and feel. Absolutely none. anyone thinks to do is, I wish I had that superpower, because
Yeah.
it's not something I have. All I can
No.
control is my reaction and my actions on the thing.
Yeah.
And if I can do the best I can, hopefully, like the Field of Dreams analogy, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Hopefully, right? But if they don't, I'm not hung up on that outcome. Like I'm not. My ego isn't attached to. The community needs to have 1,000 hits a month, and it needs to have like a Discord channel that's like constantly chatting, and there's loads of stuff going off everywhere, and there's events every other week, and there's loads of. I'm not. It's cool if all that happens. That's amazing, but I'm not. That isn't the end goal of the thing I'm building out. Because if I do, I'm building something based upon an outcome I want, and I can't control outcomes. I can just control my actions. So yeah, I think that's what a big thing is. Don't stress too much about it. If you've tried to spin it up and it's not immediately kicking off and it's not going everywhere, doesn't mean that effort has been wasted. Doesn't mean you've done something that hasn't created value for somebody, right? It might just not be the level of engagement that you want.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard, right? Because it's hard not to take it personally when you put in the effort and like you turn up and it's like there's 3 people, or you're like, oh man, what's going on? I mean, one of the things I try and do is obviously try and understand what people want to get out of communities of practice, and you know, so that when they are being built, they're being built with those things in mind, but then also trying to get those people involved to go, well, if you want to get this out, then maybe you can help shape how we get that out, right? But even then it can be really hard. So I think like your message there around, you know, don't take it too personally, and I think that's really key, because you just got to keep going really, and you know, trying to build them, because they do make a lot of difference when they work. They do make a lot of difference, and if you can get them and allow them to grow organically, and to your point, don't make them mandatory and force people to come, because guess what? As soon as they leave, they're not ever going to want to go to a community of practice again before, right?
Yeah.
Same like you with your beard, right?
Yeah.
You shave, you don't want to shave anymore. Right?
No, exactly. If you force people to do something, eventually they go, well, I'm never doing that again. Once I got freedom of will to do that decision, I just want to do it. Yeah, so, and exactly. It also feels bad with people that, like, if they've only ever been in. Yeah, when I had it at my old company, it was like this, and they made us do it, and I was like, I'm not interested. I'm like, well, that's not what we're building here. No. If you want to get involved, oh, cool, man. But if you don't, it's also sound. I'm not. It's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of effort, and you know, it can feel quite personal when things maybe don't quite, you know, evolve or grow as you'd like them to. But I think it's, you know, don't allow it to get to that point, in the sense of don't take it personally. Just keep doing what you're doing, and allow it to, you know, try and find some allies. I think is a really great way. It's like
like-minded individuals who share a common goal will always win. 100%.
Yeah. So Stephen, obviously you've touched on Stoic testing, right, a few times, like, and referenced it. Do you want to explain a little bit more? There's some people that maybe have seen you on some of our podcasts and stuff will maybe already know this, but I'm really interested to hear a bit more, and I'm sure the audience are. So if you don't mind,
so maybe a little trigger alert to start off with.
Yeah.
So the way I got into it is maybe not a very happy story. Let's say that. So I'll share some of it. Effectively, so I'm in this Air Force civilian transition period. Like I'm around this time of my life. So this is maybe 8-9 years ago, something like that. And basically, my wife suffers a miscarriage,
right?
Which led to, like, so if you kind of get a feel of kind of person I'm like, I want to fix things, I want to help, I want to solutionize, I want to sort the problem, right? When life presents you with that doesn't work, because there's no solution, there's no fixing it. The thing has happened, and that really led my brain to spiral to, like, if I can't do that, I'm like kind of not worth, like, really put unpleasant thoughts around that process. And then I remember just seeing, like, I think it was just on YouTube, just looking for, like, just watching videos and just doom scrolling, and there was a quote. I can't even remember the quote, but it was something from either Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, the two famous Stoic philosophers, and they said something, and I just went, just that's bang on that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, started to ingest lots of the videos and the quotations, like, what is this thing? What am I talking about? And then it led me exploring it and I'll try and do a whistle stop tour for those who aren't aware of it. So when I talk about Stoicism, I'm talking about uppercase Stoicism and not lowercase Stoicism. So big S, not small s.
Yeah.
So small s, if you Google Stoicism or you Google someone who's Stoic, they'd be like unfeeling, unthinking, like emotionless robot, right? That's lowercase s, almost a toxic side of the Stoic. It's not what I'm talking about. Stoicism, the capital S, is it's a philosophy that came out of Greece, and also the Romans were heavily engaged in it, and it was built upon a very simple principle. And it's a philosophy, but it's a very practical philosophy. So it's not like sit on a hill and think really hard about meditating and you'll feel great about your life. It actually is very practically based.
Yeah.
Not that meditation isn't practical for some, just isn't there for me. So it's built on the principle that the only thing you control is how you react to something that happens. So in that negative example that I used was how I react. The only thing I control there, because I'm grasping for something to control, I'm looking for something I can help with, that it came back to that.
Yeah.
I can't control anything now. What can I control is how I react. So if I can try and be as positive and as and helpful as I can be in the constraints of that problem, that's all I can control, right? And then I started to apply it to my life in general, and saw lots of benefits, both psychologically, emotionally, and physically. Lost a bunch of weight and all sorts of stuff. And I'm in this career transition testing period, and I was like seeing all these problems happening in testing, like testers burning out, like leaving the profession, all this kind of stuff that still happens and you hear about. And I'm like, why is this still happening? Because all the articles I've read and all the people I listen to about it, it's still happening. I was like, well, it's happening because people don't realise that that's the only thing that they can control. They think they can control other things, and they don't. And because they think they can control them, they're having these really negative reactions of burning out or leaving. Yeah. So if you apply that to testing, right, how often do you as a tester, unless you're head of QA, control the budget?
Yeah.
Right? You don't. How often do you get to decide what tools you get to use? Most of the time you don't. You don't get to decide the size of team that you work with, right? You don't get to decide the requirements that are in. You don't get to decide the language the code the base has been built in. You control nothing. You are literally, you have no control. All you can control is your reactions to all of those things. So, okay, cool. I don't have a budget. I have this much money instead of this much. What do? Okay, I can apply different methodologies to offset my lack of resources. I don't have an automation framework built. Okay, what off-the-shelf stuff can I use that's cheap, that would work given the context and give me some sort of coverage and assurance? I can do that. I don't have any budget for training my people. What can I do? Well, I'll reach out to communities of practice like the Ministry of Testing and others, and there's lots of free training material online I can get access to. Cool, let's use that. So it's flipping all you focus on is the things that you can control. There's certainly other elements of Stoicism, but that's where the Stoic testing approach kind of fitted in. And when I started to do that with clients as well, so when I'm advising a client on like, this is a thing you should be doing, and they go, well, I've got all these constraints. I'm like, cool, man. Well, given these constraints, you can control this. And that's the thing you should focus on. Don't worry about that. Like, if you like, you know to tell a client, it would be good if you had 90% automation here. And they go, yeah, we don't have any. Like, so how quickly do you think it's going to take them to get to 90? If you go, next year, we'll get you to 90. It's just not going to happen, right? You know the client, you can go, cool. Well, just what you can control is going from that to this, to that, to that, to that, to that, to that. And slowly, incrementally, start to build those improvements and start to build that stuff out. Because I'm only focusing on outcomes I can truly control. And the Stoicism came out of that period into that. And then it kind of morphed into like, Stoic Test is quite a cool name. I'll just put that out. And then that became like an alias. And then and then more and more. Then people were asking me to come and put like, Steve, why are you talking about an ancient Greek philosophy in testing? And my first pick, I think my first talk I did, which was at PaceCon, not last year, the year before, was on like Stoicism in testing and why it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And why the principles of Stoicism. And there's other principles apart from the one I spoke about. Why it's a good thing for people to potentially apply to their quality and testing careers.
Yeah.
So.
I love it. I love that. I say it a lot to people, like, control your controllables, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the things you need to focus your energy on, because anything outside of that is just wasting energy, wasting your passion, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Because it becomes, and that's where people, like you've said, right? People burn out. People end up leaving the industry because they're like, well, I can't influence these things, so why am I trying? And I did a bite-sized episode recently on small changes you can make as a single quality professional in a team, right?
Yeah.
Try and influence pieces of the system that you can control. So, you can sit with your developer and do certain things. You can, you know what I mean? So it's rather than trying to do those big pieces, like trying to influence your senior leadership, well, what can you control? What can you influence?
Yeah.
So I love that. We could spend hours chatting about that. I know I know we could. I'm not gonna do that right now, because we may save that for another episode to bring you back on. But Stephen, I want to talk more about, like, your the stuff you do outside of your day job.
Yeah.
Right. So you are head of accreditation. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
At UKITB.
Yeah. So you can Ireland testing board. Yeah.
Yeah, and also you're an MOT ambassador as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm also GSDC AI ambassador as well, or SME for them, and then I'm also the Ava Automation. I'm on their ambassador program as well. So yeah, but lots of little things I do, like almost like testing side hustles, I guess is the best way to describe it. None of which pay me any real money whatsoever. I just do them because I think they're worth doing. Yeah, that's a thing I've. That's not an Air Force thing, but it's weirdly sort of related. So the Air Force, one of the things you could do to get promoted was you'd have to be very good at your job, which is kind of the given. But you do side activities to prove you had bandwidth to do other stuff. So, like, say you couldn't express your leadership potential because you were a junior, well, I could pick up something else on the side to help out someone else on station that could show my leadership potential and skills. And then that's also giving back and then building the communities, right? So yeah, all those things are because I realised that testers, I think more than other IT professionals, we do really need a community around us, either a community in your company, a community with your client, or the wider testing community for whatever mechanism that is. There's some amazing, unbelievable people in the industry, way more knowledgeable and smarter than I am, that have come up with amazing ways of doing things. I could reinvent the wheel, or I could just use their advice because they've already done all that stuff. That'd be super good, right? They're very supportive. Piers Connor's is a good example of that, right? And then Ministry of Testing is another good example of that, where I've just done it over time, and then found that it's helpful to them and helpful to me, and therefore helpful to the community. And then each one I've joined is for a different kind of reason. So the UKITB, whether you like it or don't like the ISQI and STQB testing framework qualification, the industry body, whether you're a fan of it or not, it is what it is. But if I want to help change that perception, again, going back to Stoicism, I can't control that perception, but what I can control is maybe how we do something internally in that organisation if I work within it. Right, that's being a positive agent for change, for something that will potentially lead to a greater outcome for the community.
Yeah,
Ministry testing has been around for forever and changed guises in many ways over those years. The chance to join them and work with them has been amazing as well. So a lot of the stuff, all my talks and little chats I've had, they've gone through the Ministry of Testing as well. So if people want to look me up, I'm on there. And then I think because I collected like badges like a Boy Scout. The other stuff is just people that kind of messaging me out of the blue. Steve, would be really interested if you could do so and so, and if it resonated with me, yeah, cat's quite cool. I think I'd like to do that. I'll get involved. But we spoke offline, Stu, about like where I say life tokens. It's a good example of that. So maybe the members only section that Stu might share afterwards. I have this life principle. I can't call it life tokens. So basically, you get 10 tokens to spend in your life every week, right? And some of those tokens will be spent on your family and your friends. Some of them will be spent on work. Some will be spent on your hobbies. Some will be spent on health. But you've only got 10. You can't get more than 10 because that's just you've got X amount of bandwidth in life. This is an example where I do too many things. So I've probably got 20 that I need to spend every week, but I can only get 10. So I just try and spend the 10 as best I can. But there's always other stuff. Like if I would love to do more, I'd love to get involved in more things. But I know something else in my 10 is going to get hit by doing that. Like I'll lose family time, I'll lose time with work or whatever it is, hobbies, etc. I'll lose that time. So I think communities are massive to be a part of. And also don't be scared of joining it when you're like, oh, I've got nothing. I'm not an industry leader. I've not been doing this for like 20 years. I don't know. I can't. What do I have to add? I was a brand new, almost fresh out the box tester to some degree when the UKTB guys spoke to me. I was still fresh in the game in my eyes compared to a lot of the industry veterans. That a lot of the guys who are talking to me are 30-year career testers, right? They've been done every job under the sun. To approach me like, Steve, would you be interested in doing X, Y, and Z? Sure, but I don't know why you're asking me. And then when they come back, because new perspective, different viewpoints, right? There's lots of stuff why your specific view and seeing things adds real merit and value to an organisation or an ambassador program or community.
Yeah, and that's that diversity of thought, experience. Like I said, like I couldn't wait to get you on the show because just to hear your story and how that translates, right? And I want to be doing more of those, allowing the sort of those stories to be shared more and more and more, and make them more accessible to people as well, because not everybody can get to conferences and and I think so the more that we can share, the more diversity of thought, experience that we can get into these communities and all this sort of stuff. I think it's only going to help the industry. And even more so at a time where, again, we're at this shaky period, right, with so much going on and the AI world and all this stuff where people are feeling nervous and uncertain. So I think if you have the opportunity to do those things, like to your point, don't. And I put a post out today actually off the back of the conversation I had with Luke about squiggly lives, right? And just sort of saying, don't worry about titles. Forget about your title. Don't allow your title or anybody else's title to restrict you in any way, shape, or form. Right? Just be you. Go and do your thing, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And that for me is just so important.
Yeah.
You know,
so you got a good point you touched on there, which was like this is a kind of shaky, scary period for testers again. I feel like the two letters the two vowels that should not be named.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't know. Did you ever used to watch 40 Towers?
Yes.
Yeah. Don't mention the war. It's like that, isn't it? It's a bit like that.
So for those who are not on the intro, we're obviously talking about AI.
Yeah.
And so the way I tackle it, maybe some advice. The way I tackle AI is how a Stoic tackles AI. Right?
Exactly.
I do not control how quickly, and I will say this in true word, how preposterously fast AI is going. Right, it is a roller coaster strapped to a Saturn V rocket. It is at a speed which I don't think we've ever seen in the tech industry. Right.
Yeah.
Never did I think I would just put some English words into an AI and a website would appear fully built and rendered. I'm like, I guess that's where we are now. That's insane to me from like 5-10 years ago, right? So how does a Stoic tackle AI is what can I control? So I can control the AIs that I use, right? I can control what I read about AI. I can make sure that I've got very different opinions on it from different spectrums. I want to hear critics and I want to hear advocates, and then I want to hear people in the middle, and I want to see where on that spectrum I might sit. I can control. You can't. Will you get replaced by someone? Will you get replaced as an AI, like by an AI as a tester? No, I don't think so. But will you get replaced by a tester who is using AI? I think 100%. If you are
Yeah.
AI literate to at least some degree, then I think that you're in a rocky position.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can control that. I can control how much training I do in it, how often I use it, what's coming out, the things
Yeah.
to look for, and I actually test it as well, man. Just get amongst it. It's the same as anything else.
Yeah.
The same testing philosophy applies. Like come up with a premise, build your experiment, test your thinking. Does it confirm it? Does it not? Cool. That's all.
Yeah.
You're just finding information about the thing. That hasn't changed, and all the your good principles of testing haven't changed.
No, they
I think
haven't.
that's where people kind of get they get washed away in the tsunami of nonsense that gets flooded out of like, oh my god, look at this. There's no developers in this company now. They just do purely AI written code. I'm like, they do, right? But who's using the product at the end of the day? Is it a human being? Is it a human? Guess what? Humans probably going to have to test that because a human's the consumer of it.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Like, unless the code's been written for something else, a human being will have to test it at some point in some way, right?
Yeah, and this comes back to what we were saying about earlier about being pragmatic and having that pragmatic view on these sorts of things, right? Yes, there's going to be change. Yes, if you're a tester and you're not embracing AI in some way, shape, or form, will you be replaced? Quite possibly, right? There's no certainty to anything in this world, right? So we can't say absolutely. But there's a higher chance of that happening. And I think I was chatting with Chris the other day. We just had a quick catch up. Chris Henderson, for those that don't know, who's my co-host who hasn't been here for a while again.
Busy chap.
Yeah, he's a busy chap. He's just started a new role, so he's like engulfed with that whole new head of quality type world. Welcome to that world, Chris. Love you, man. But we were chatting and we were talking about AI, and I'm a bit of a metaphor person and stuff like that. And anybody that's seen Back to the Future 3, right? And the sort of the final few scenes of Back to the Future 3, where they're on the steam train and they're pushing the DeLorean and they're trying to get it up to 88 miles an hour, and they're having to throw these like combustion logs into the fire.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's getting faster and the train's falling apart, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's off of a cliff, right? That's how I see, like, if we just keep throwing AI for speed and efficiency,
100%.
the systems are just going to crumble beneath, right? Because they're not designed for it. And I think that's something that people need to embrace and understand, and and question. And I think that is the questioning of those things is in people's control. Right? Is the system that we're working in ready for this? Are we doing this for the right reasons, and so on? You won't be able to necessarily control the answer. You won't be able to control the answer, right? Somebody will go, yeah, absolutely, we're just going to go anyway. And guess what? You'll be on that train and it'll go off the cliff and boom and fireballs and all that sort of stuff. And you'll have the Clint Eastwood Canyon or whatever they ended up calling it. Because if you haven't watched the film, go and watch. Because diversity of audience, there might be some young people watching this that haven't even seen Back to the Future 3. Watch the first two first and then go and watch them.
It makes more sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's kind of how I look at it. It's kind of like the system will just break down, right? Because it'll expose it for the problems. So all the things that we do as testers and quality professionals, for me, are even more important now than ever before. Right, the thoughts of continuous quality, how we build it in from a systemic perspective, all those things, right? They're in the spotlight more and more and more. So I think that's the sort of coming at it with that type of mindset, that positive, I think that's a way to look at it.
And I get the other viewpoint from your C-suite or equivalent, right? Like speed, cheaper, faster, more efficient, like more of it.
Yeah.
It's a hard job being a tester because you're a Naismith in a call, right? If you know what a Naismith is, right? You're often the people. Everyone else in the room is saying yes, and you're often the person that's going, I don't know if we should do that.
Yeah.
Right? That's a very difficult position to be in, right?
Yeah.
But you have to help the people in that room. You have to understand it's like I'm helping here. I'm like I'm like the car alarm going off in the middle of the night. Hopefully, there's nothing wrong with the car, but you should probably check just in case. It might just be a
Yeah.
squirrel at the car, but I'm just gonna. Yeah, the car's fine. Cool.
Yeah.
To listen to your tester when they say, "I just have a concern." It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean put the brakes and everything, stop the train. It doesn't mean that. It might just mean, Marty, do we know that bridge is out in the canyon?
Exactly.
That's what that
Yeah.
means. Like
Yeah.
it's help. So if you understand that a tester is an enabler, and I think Khan did a great talk on PaceCon about this. Of like, don't be someone who's just like saying, "Oh, it's going to fail," and then it's like, "Ha!" and then like running off in the background, like watching the wheels come off it. Like, this might be a problem, and maybe we could do this. Right, being an engineer, being part of the engineering team to enable that problem.
Yeah.
So I'm testing it out. I'm testing it now with a client. Now, one of the challenges we had is, again, it's just the sheer volume.
Yeah.
Like, the amount to test is just obscene, right? It's just endless. It's just faster than a human being can process, right? So, like, coming up with methodologies to work around that problem and use other systems is what you have to come up with. And really also changing. So a big thing I think we as testers can do to help be seen as useful in the era of AI is we should be well aware of what it is not good at, what it has a challenge with, and point that out to clients, point that out to the people that you work with. Yeah, I've just had this massive code commit. It's 1,000 lines for me, and it's amazing. It's all worked. I'm like, awesome. But you know, this model has problems with blah 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 syntax. Oh, does it? Yeah. Have you thought about that when you wrote unit tests? No, I haven't. Might have a look at it. The example I had was a client wanted the AI to produce kind of like an automated report, and so the way that I was testing it was to give it basically a set of criteria. I would score the quality of the content out of 100, basically. And like, the score's like 85, 86, 87%. Good, pretty good. And he's like, I want 100%. I was like, okay, cool. I was like, well, the current process is human. Right? A human does this thing. Does a human get 100%? He's like, every time. I'm like, you must know some amazing humans. Right? Because I make mistakes on emails all the time. Never mind like a 50-page report with loads of intelligent data in it. I definitely make mistakes. I was like, why is the AI any different? It's access to the same source material, has access to the context that you've given it, which may be flawed, right? The information you've given it may be flawed. There may be biases in the information that you've given it in this context. So guess what? It's probably going to make the same mistakes you are. It's just going to make them faster, right? So you might be able to spot them quicker. But ultimately, again, helping people be educated in what AI is good and not good for. And again, that's a very fast-moving engine that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but that's really a way to help win people over and help testers still be really engaged in the age that we're in currently.
I think it's interesting. We're in an interesting stage. I mean, we'll always go through these cycles, don't we? And it'll be, and I think the advice there from what we've been saying is obviously embrace it. Don't shy away from it. Don't try and find that middle ground, like you said, right? Don't be too much of a skeptic. Don't be too much of a what's the word?
Advocate.
What was it? Advocate or whatever it is. And then try and find that middle ground and come at it with a really pragmatic viewpoint. And I think like you say, right, creating the space to listen to feedback on these concerns, these situations and stuff like that, because it's not easy being a tester. And when we talked, when we were sort of discussing what we were going to talk about in this episode before, you said about testers being a weird breed, right? And we are. we absolutely are a weird breed, aren't we?
Yeah. So I was talking. So I spoke to Stu earlier in the week about what we were going to talk about. One of the things I'll pass and mention is like we're a weird breed. And the way I spoke about that was once I got into testing and like started just like doing the job, I realized like, oh my god, I can't unsee it. So do you like the scene in the Matrix, another excellent film call out, Stu? We're gonna do a second one.
Yeah.
When Neo starts to see the code and he's just like, I could just everything is the code. Well, that's that cabbage is a code and that's all code. Like everything is quality. I can't unsee it. So like I would like My mum, like a good example, my mum bought some shopping and the bag broke. And she brought it in. I was like, it's quality that, mum. She's like, what are you on about? She's like, doesn't matter. It's like the materials that they've used to house that thing, right, versus the test you've got. I wonder how much weight I can put in that, right? Like, that is like going into a self-service checkout and just going, this UI is horrible. Like, why is that over there? That doesn't make any sense. Or like the table that I'm sat at, like, why is the desk not perfectly in line with that pull? That's because the materials have been very well built.
Yeah.
Like, why are the instructions back to front? Like, you can't unsee that. And it's a very weird person that actually enjoys that. Not only like do they see it, they enjoy seeing it, enjoy finding it in the things that they do. That's a very weird type of person to be getting on with. Immediately spotting the flaws or the issues in a thing. I'm very difficult to take to movies against you, especially if it's science fiction. To point out that's or military stuff even worse. I can't watch military movies. Anything that's got military stuff in it
terrible.
Doesn't work like that. That wouldn't happen. This isn't true. All these things would be in place.
You must have loved Top Gun.
I just have to just bite my hand, just switch that part of my brain off, test the brain, go to sleep, just engage in the content.
Yeah,
and I think that's again a very weird group of people that thrive in that environment or thrive in that mindset. It's very unique.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I've talked about this about my learnings and sort of delving into systems thinking more, and the more I do that, the more I look at everything as a system as well as the quality, and I'm like, I don't know how my brain shuts off at all, if I'm honest. It's like everything I look at. You know, I was having a conversation with my dad and his partner the other week, and we got into systems, like world systems, and they were like, they were literally like, oh, sorry, I'm going into one now, and I'm like, you are a little bit stupid.
Well, so one of my I've got some here actually. So my hobby, I'm into Warhammer, right? So I play little toy soldiers, which is a competitive war game. Henry Cavill's into it, and most testers are into nerdy stuff. We're a nerdy bunch. That's my favourite nerd. It's a complicated, easy to get into, but complicated game to get to master, right? And a lot of my friends are into it. Like, why haven't they? So something would come out and it'd be broken, as in like it'd be too good in the game. And the guys are like, why haven't they tested that? I'm like, because you're not seeing how complicated that is to test. Right? There's lots of variables, not just in the game system itself, but also in the individual. So if you think about it in a software context, there's the software that's been built, but also that specific type of person, user, interacting with that software, given that example, right? So like my dad using a website will find things wrong with it that I will not find because he doesn't know how to use a website. So when I clicked on the thing and it didn't look like that thing and it went to the wrong page, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm like, Dad, you just obviously click on that icon there, and he just wouldn't see that, right? Because he's not from that background. So again, when I'm working with my friends or playing this with my colleagues, why haven't they tested that? I get that a lot. Why hasn't this been tested properly? And I'm like trying to explain to them the exponential amount of tests that would be required to do that is ridiculous. Never mind in software where the numbers become ridiculous, right? Callum used that real famous quote of like how many there's more atoms in the universe than there is password combinations in a login screen, right? It's like you can't test them all. So this is a good like takeaway statement where I've had people work for me, people that work for that. Is it fully tested, Steve? And I'm like, I refuse to use the language. I will say I've tested the requirements as best of my ability in the given the constraints that you've given me. That's what I've done. So it's not fully tested because nothing is.
No.
Right, and learning that life lesson as a tester, I think, is something we all need to do.
100%. And mate, honestly, I think that's a great way to wrap this up. We've been talking for so long, and we could keep going. I always, before I do, I always hand back over to the guest to kind of give a closing statement, a final thought. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with from this conversation?
Okay. I hope you found it interesting, and I think my only thing would be don't be hard on yourself. Be kind to yourself because we all have a lot of difficulties. And the job is very difficult, and the market's very difficult, and you're probably doing an amazing job. You just can't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that, mate. Absolutely love it. It's been an absolute pleasure, dude. Well, you need to come back on, and we need to keep talking. And we're gonna have I think we should have the whole Stephen Platten series of podcasts, just coming on and sharing your stories. But this has been brilliant, mate. Honestly,
Appreciate it.
thank you for sharing your
It's
journey.
been awesome to be on. I'm really glad I came on. Thanks.
No, you're very welcome. Anytime, my friend. Anytime. Well, that is it for another episode of the Quality Talks podcast. I hope you've really enjoyed this as much as I have. Thank you again, Stephen, for coming on. Let us know your thoughts. Share your feedback with us. Subscribe, comment, do all those fun things. Don't forget to share it with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbours, the strangers in the street as well. And more importantly, join us next time on another episode of Quality Talks podcast. Take care for now.